In the early 1990s, heavy metal was in deep trouble. A grunge tidal wave from Seattle had washed away the glam and excess of the 80s, and even the titans of thrash were starting to soften up. For a lot of people, it really felt like the end. But down in Texas, one band refused to go quietly. Instead, they channeled all their defiance into an album so brutal and honest, it didn't just save heavy metal, it redefined it for a whole new generation. Because you guys requested it, this is how Pantera created Vulgar Display of Power. Before we get started with today's video, if you guys want to support my channel, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And I've been told from a lot of my subscribers that they find themselves unsubscribed from my channel, or they don't see my new videos pop up, so make sure you turn on all notifications. And if you guys missed the announcement, I've started a second channel which covers shorter stories. The link to that channel is in the description box below. By 1991, the music world was going through a seismic shift. The Technicolor party of the 80s hair metal, well, it was over. The spandex, the hairspray, the songs about nothing but a good time, it all suddenly felt dated and completely out of touch. Even the thrash metal titans who had spent a decade pushing the limits of speed and aggression we're in this kind of weird spot. Metallica, the genre's biggest success story, had just released their Black album, a polished mid-tempo giant that sold millions but left a lot of their longtime fans feeling cold. Other thrash bands were trying new things, but that raw visceral danger seemed to be fading away. And then from the rainy Pacific Northwest, the revolution had arrived. Grunge, as it was called, led by a meteoric rise of bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden, didn't just change the charts, it changed the entire culture. Suddenly, authenticity was everything. Angsty, introspective lyrics replaced hedonistic party anthems. Flannel shirts and ripped jeans took over from leather and studs. To the record executives and even MTV, it looked like the world had moved on. Metal in all its bombastic glory was declared a dinosaur. For the fans who lived and breathed that music, it felt like a hostile takeover. Was this really the end of metal? Well, as it turned out, the answer was being hammered into shape in a small studio in Texas. Now, before Pantera could save heavy metal, they had to save themselves. If you only knew their 90s work, you might be shocked to learn that the same band who wrote songs like Hostile spent most of the 80s as a glam act. We're talking big hair, tight pants, and a sound closer to Kiss and Van Halen than Slayer. This was just the reality for the Arlington, Texas quartet. The core was there though. Vinnie Paul on drums and his brother Dimebag Darrell on guitar with bassist Rex Brown. And throughout the 80s, at least for the first half of it, they were fronted by Terry Glaze. But their identity was a product of the era. By 1986 though, they brought in a fiery vocalist from New Orleans named Phil Anselmo, whose powerhouse voice gave them a much-needed edge. They released their first album with Anselmo in 1988 with Power Metal. This record proved to be the bridge from their original glam style to their later groove metal style that they become known for. However, everything changed with their follow-up record, their major label debut, 1990's Cowboys from Hell. This was the sound of the band shedding its skin. While you could still hear their influences, Cowboys from Hell was a full-throated declaration of a new direction. It was faster, heavier, and dripping with a swagger that was all their own. The album marked a clear shift away from their glam roots and towards a sound that blended thrash acts like Slayer and Metallica with the DNA of classic bands like Black Sabbath. The track Primal Concrete Sledge in particular was a glimpse into the future. Its raw, percussive aggression felt more visceral than anything that had come before. As Phil Anselmo later said, that song could have easily fit on Vulgar Display of Power, and it was a bridge to where the band was headed. Cowboys from Hell put Pantera on the map, but it was just an appetizer. The main course was coming, and they were dead set on making it the heaviest meal of all time. Fresh off the road from promoting Cowboys from Hell, Pantera was a well-oiled machine. They toured with heavier acts who'd shaped what they wanted to do on their subsequent release. These bands included Judas Priest, Exodus, Sepultura, Suicidal Tendencies, and Prong. Vinnie told Metal Hammer years later, and that really drove us to another level. We saw our music kicking ass, and I think that catapulted us to what we did on Vulgar Display of Power. They didn't really take a break. Instead, they went straight back to their creative sanctuary, Pantego Sound Studio in Pantego, Texas. This wasn't some fancy, sterile recording studio that you'd find in LA or New York. The studio was owned by Jerry Abbott, Dimebag, and Vinnie Paul's father, which gave the band an insane amount of freedom. No label execs looking over their shoulders, no expensive studio clock ticking ticking away, it was their fortress, a place where they could lock themselves away and just focus. They brought back producer Terry Date, who helped them find their sound on Cowboys from Hell. The mission this time was simple and uncompromising: make the heaviest record of all time. Now, bassist Rex Brown and frontman Phil Anselmo had to rent a pair of apartments across from the studio. They cut a hole in the adjoining fence to be able to walk directly to the studio. Dimebag's girlfriend Rita actually had an apartment in the same building, but brothers Daryl and Vinny were staying at their mom's house at the time. Rex Brown told Louder Sound, "Me and Phil were still broke, so I bought myself a bike. I used to ride up to this place that was like a 7-Eleven, and we knew a guy that was working up there, and he'd leave us beer and sandwiches so we had something to eat when we were done working." Vinny explained that before producer Terry Date joined the project, the band had already created demo versions of several songs, including A New Level, Regular People, and No Good. Unlike Cowboys from Hell, which Pantera demoed largely before recording, most of the songs on Vulgar Display of Power were composed in the studio with their producer. Their goal was to get an early start, and they had begun working on sound qualities, which were decent. However, when Date entered the picture, the band refined and perfected those tones even further. Vinny told Louder Sound, "To us, heavy metal had to sound like a machine, so we worked really hard to just be this abrasive saw. The guitar had to have a buzzsaw sound to it, the drums had to have an edge to them, and I just remember Dime and Terry Date spending many, many hours in there just being very meticulous about getting the guitars ass tight," as they put it. Once the right sounds were achieved, the instrumental part of the band would compose the music during the day, and Anselmo would drop by from his apartment and react with excitement to what he heard. A day or so later, the frontman would have vocals for the instrumental tracks. The writing process was very collaborative, and it was driven by a strong sense of teamwork and unity. With the instruments reaching a new peak of ferocity, the big question was, what would Phil Anselmo do? On Cowboys from Hell, his vocals were powerful, a mix of gritty melody and high-pitched Halford-style shrieks. But for Vulgar Display of Power, he transformed himself just as radically as the music did. Anselmo tapped into a deeper, rawer, and more confrontational part of his personality. His delivery became a masterclass in controlled chaos, a searing, aggressive bark that was still so precise you could understand every single venom spat word. The lyrics also shifted dramatically. The songs on Vulgar Display of Power weren't about fantasy or mythology. They were about real-world conflict, personal integrity, and just a fight for respect. They were street-level anthems fueled by pure rage. Many of the lyrics were intensely personal, tackling everything from discrimination and betrayal to racism, politics, and loss. Anselmo captured the frustration of a generation that felt, to borrow his own words, from a new level, stepped on and with. He became the voice of the voiceless, a conduit for anger that so many listeners had felt. This wasn't just theatrical rage, you could feel it. Anselmo at the time was listening to a lot of hardcore music, and he told Loudwire, "I wanted to sing the truth as ugly as it was a lot of the time. In songs like Hollow and This Love, I wrote about losing people, and I've had healthy doses of it from early in my life, in New Orleans especially." This wasn't just a casual goal, it was a direct response to what was happening in music. With grunge on the rise and some of their metal heroes softening their sound, Pantera saw a void, or maybe an opening. They saw a chance to double down, to reject compromise, and create something that was unapologetically brutally heavy. It was in this isolated world fueled by a shared vision that the real work on Vulgar Display of Power began. While laser focused on making music during studio sessions, the band also partied just as hard. They played wild games, including one called Chicken Break, which involved driving a rental car and grabbing the emergency brake for thrills and causing mayhem, sometimes even risking their safety. Vinny recalled to Louder Sound, "I was doing like 60 miles per hour, and when we hit the car, it went into a 360 spin and spun and spun and spun, and then it just came to a stop in the middle of the highway. We both just looked at each other, pale white, and went, okay, that didn't happen." Another game that the band played was called Twist and Hurl. The members would down a bottle of beer, and then they'd have to spin and throw the bottle at a nearby stop sign. One night, a group of cops actually showed up, but the band somehow talked their way out of getting in trouble. A few months into the recording sessions, the band got an offer that they couldn't refuse, opening for AC/DC and Metallica in Russia. The band jumped at the chance, playing to a crowd exceeding 1 million people. The show seemed to give the band a jolt when it came time to head back into the studio to finish up work on Vulgar Display of Power. Dimebag recalled, "We flew home and went back into the studio with a bit more swagger in our step, and the music just bled out of us. I was on the most positive kick I've ever been on. When I wrote lyrics like A New Level of Confidence of Power, it was true, man. When Pantera finished recording the album, they flew to New York to master the record. Upon completing the album, they sat down and listened to what they were about to unleash on the world. Vinny recalled Dime was sitting there on the couch and he was crying all the way through it. And I went, dude, are you all right? And he said, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's exactly what I always wanted and always dreamed of. The real power of the album is its flawless track list, an 11-song assault that never lets up. The opener, Mouth for War, is a mission statement. It kicks off with one of Dimebag's most iconic riffs and sets the tone for the entire record. The lyrics talk about channeling hate into something productive, a perfect metaphor for the album itself, and it became the lead single. From there, the album unleashes a new level, and the title says it all. This was the band consciously pushing their own limits, a song about finding a new plane of confidence and power. It's the sound of a band that knows exactly what it's capable of, and it's ready to prove it. And then comes Walk. Built around a riff so simple yet powerful, it's now a permanent part of the metal vocabulary. Walk is the ultimate anthem of defiance. The riff was born during a sound check from the Cowboys from Hell tour, and the lyrics were a direct shot at condescending people that the band was dealing with as they got more famous. Anselmo's message was both blunt and universal. It was a simple demand for integrity that resonated everywhere, and it became Pantera's first top 40 hit in the UK, and it also became one of their most recognizable songs. Hostile is exactly what the title promises. 2.5 minutes of pure, undiluted thrash fury. It's a relentless blast of speed and aggression that captures the raw energy of a live show. Legend has it that at the end of the vocal take, a completely spent Anselmo threw his mic across the room, and you can actually hear the feedback on the final recording. According to producer Terry Date, the song was heavily influenced by Nine Inch Nails' song Head Like a Hole. The song Rise, meanwhile, deals with racism and revolves around a story of Anselmo being inspired by an encounter he had with 2 black kids back home in Louisiana. But Vulgar Display of Power wasn't just a one-trick pony. Tracks like This Love and Hollow showed off the band's incredible dynamic range. This Love shifts from a clean, deceptively calm verse into an explosive, crushing chorus that explores the dark side of obsession. The song was inspired by Anselmo's neglectful childhood, which affected his relationship later on with women. As he admitted, in a lot of relationships, I could never give all of myself. At the time, there could have been a dozen different girls the song This Love could have been about, because none of it was real to me. Love came from a different place, not from a relationship between 2 people, because I never saw it as a kid, man. Meanwhile, the song Hollow starts as a somber, almost beautiful ballad about losing a friend before erupting into one of the album's heaviest and most gut-wrenching endings. These songs prove Pantera could blend brutality with real emotional depth, adding layers to their hostility and cementing their genius as songwriters. An album this confrontational also needed an image to match. The story behind the cover of Vulgar Display of Power is a piece of metal folklore, though the reality is a little different from the legend. The band told their label Atco Records that they wanted something simple and vulgar, a photo of a dude getting punched in the face. Now, the label's first attempt was a picture of a boxer with a glove on, which the band shot down immediately. It was too clean, too professional. It looked like a sport. They wanted it to feel like a real street fight. The final image, shot by photographer Brad Guys, nailed that feeling perfectly. For years, Vinnie Paul spun the myth that they hired a guy, paid him $10 a punch, and hit him over 30 times to get the perfect shot. The truth, however, is that the model, a man named Sean Cross, was never actually punched. Guys known for creating a sense of movement had Cross get punched hard while whipping his head around to simulate the impact, which was captured with a slow shutter speed. The result was an image of pure kinetic violence, the skin ripping, the hair flying, the moment of impact frozen in time. It was the perfect visual for the music inside. As for the title, that was snatched by horror fan Phil Anselmo from a line from the 1973 film The Exorcist. It perfectly summed up the album's raw, unrestrained power. Ahead of the album coming out, the band even reconnected with their original frontman Terry Glaze, who was playing Dallas at the time with his new band called Blowfish. Glaze recalled, "Daryl showed up, and after my gig, he had a limo out in the parking lot in Dallas. He said, 'Come out, I want to play you the new record.' We got in the limo and he had the cassette tape, and he put on Mouth for War, and he was air guitaring to it. And he goes, 'What do you think?' I said, 'I think it's incredible.' Released on February 25th, 1992, Vulgar Display of Power didn't debut at number 1, but it did enter the Billboard 200 chart at a respectable number 44. But its success wasn't a flash in the pan, it was a slow, relentless burn. Fueled by word of mouth, the album stayed on the chart for an incredible 79 weeks, longer than any other Pantera record. It was certified gold in 1993 and platinum by 1997, and eventually double platinum in 2004, cementing its place as the band's best-selling album. While their next record, Far Beyond Driven, would pull off the stunning feat of debuting at number 1, it was Vulgar that built the foundation for that success. If you guys are interested, I've done a whole video on Far Beyond Driven and the really cool MTV contest they had to go along with it. The link to that is down below. Now, the album's shockwave was felt immediately across the metal world. At a time when the genre was supposedly dying, Pantera proved that there was still a huge audience for heavy, aggressive, and honest music. They didn't follow the trends, they started their own. Vinny told Louder Sound, "All I can say is that it was one of those unique times when the band was still so hungry. We were making $150 a week per diems. We weren't making a paycheck. We were just doing it because we loved music and had fun jamming together. We were a team. We were brothers." Perhaps the most enduring legacy of Vulgar Display of Power is how it defined a new subgenre, groove metal. Pantera took the speed of thrash and injected it with a heavy rhythmic blues-based swing. Dimebag's riffs weren't just fast, they had a primal headbanging feel that was impossible to ignore. The new sound gave American metal its own identity, something totally different from European thrash or Scandinavian black metal. It felt more real than hair metal, warmer than thrash, and way less cynical than grunge. The album's influence is immeasurable. It became the cornerstone for countless bands that followed, from the nu metal movement of the late 90s with bands like Korn to the American metalcore scene of the 2000s. In 2017, Rolling Stone ranked it the 10th best metal album of all time, a testament to its lasting power. Now, Vulgar Display of Power was more than just a collection of songs, it was a statement. It was proof that metal wasn't dead. In fact, in the hands of 4 guys from Texas, it was more hostile, more powerful, and more alive than before. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again in Rock Roll True Stories. Take care.